Welcome back to another fantastic episode of I'm Gonna Talk and You're Gonna Listen. This is the first. How do I say this? The first post post election, and well, it was fun watching it last night. Every single thing I said, I think, came true. I don't I don't know if I said how much I thought Orange Man um was gonna win by. I think I knew it was going to be over 300, but I didn't know if it was going to be like 307. But it was funny when I did the math on the calculators and put in my estimate. I think it came up to like 310 or something. But I think when I was calculating it, I forgot, that some of those counties or some of those, there's a few states where you get like one per district or something. So I didn't quite calculate that, but I was I was within a couple of oh my gosh, my brain is just like it's been a crazy 2 or 3 days. Um, Electoral votes. I think I was within a couple of electoral vote points. I think my map. Oh, I took a screenshot of it. Okay, if this is the one I'm thinking, is this it? No, dang it. I can't find the only screenshot I have is yeah, that's not right. I took one. No, is that no, that's like close to like 317 or something. I did see one that said like 317, and I'm like, whoa, that's kind of too high. Yeah, so the I think when I clicked all the states that I thought, I think it was around like 317 or something. But I think I'm like 307 sounds like a closer number because I figured for some reason in my brain I thought I think I wasn't thinking of Colorado, but I thought he was going to get New Mexico and Virginia, and I think was thinking Minnesota also. Um, so I was hovering around like 307. Um, he ended up. It looks like he ended up getting 312. So I was like pretty stinking close. Um, so tooting tooting my own horn there. I don't think I like made that prediction. Um, like I don't think I told anybody, but that's what I was seeing in my eye, in my mind's eye. Um, I think that let's see what were all my predictions. That was one of them. I was just a couple off. I think I thought I thought that they were immediately going to start stealing things at 11 p.m. Pacific. And it was kind of funny because our internet shut off right at 11 p.m. Immediately at 11 p.m. our internet shut off. So that was kind of funny. Um, and you might go, well, they didn't steal it. Uh, those like white vans, was that Atlanta? No, that wasn't Atlanta. I'm aware of that. My brain is just in a big fog. I had a really shitty day at work today. Um, and anyway, so my brain's kind of foggy. Um, those white. I don't know if y'all saw the pictures of those like white trucks, and they're like, we can't. Oh no, those pencil was that Pennsylvania, where they're like, we can't call the election in Pennsylvania until a bunch of white trucks show up. And everyone's like, that sounds like the biggest load of bullshit ever. But sure enough, like it was totally real. There was these like white trucks and they show up and like an hour goes by. And I'm like, this is the biggest bullshit on the planet. Like nobody thinks this is like sketchy. Um, that's stupid. If that was in a conservative area, I imagine people would be like losing their minds. But I don't care if it was like red, white, green, blue, or purple. Like by that time on the East Coast, it was like 1 or 2 in the two going on 3 in the morning. Like, oh, so there's mystery white trucks showing up at like 1, 2, 3 in the morning. What's this sound like? Well, this sounds like 4 years ago. So I thought for sure that they were going to steal Pennsylvania, which is the same shit that happened 4 years ago. Where just millions of fucking votes for only one side show up in the middle of the night. And so did that happen? I think that they didn't have enough votes to flip Pennsylvania, so enough cheated votes ready to go. Because nothing explains that. Just like massive convenience. Um, Nevertheless, there were white trucks. They were on video as a real thing. Because CNN had somebody there, and they're like, "Oh, they're supposed to," because they were saying it was a U-Haul, and I'm like, that is ultra specific. Do they think that a U-Haul is going to be like nondescript in the middle of the night, and nobody's gonna, think that to like try to? Why is there a U-Haul driving around in the middle of the night? Maybe something valuable is inside of it. Um, but on top of that, like they weren't calling Atlanta. Like there was just a couple of like really weird things, and it was just a massive flashback from like 8 years ago, where CNN is like scrambling trying to figure out how she could possibly win, even though there was no way on earth that she could have won. They could have called it like 3 hours, 4 hours earlier, and they just didn't want to because well, no, some mystery votes are going to show up at 2 or 3 a.m. Just trust us. Yeah, I already forgot what I was talking about. Projections, predictions. Um, I think so. Okay, civil unrest. I guess so. I don't want to segue to civil unrest yet. Um, I think so. I think my predictions were pretty solid. Um, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I talked about how that abortion thing was just going to blow up in their face. I talked about that a lot, and it did just completely blow up in their face. That was one of the first things that CNN said when the talking heads immediately show up at 11 p.m. as mysteriously. So the counting stopped for an hour last night from 10 p.m. to 11 p.m. Pacific. The counting stopped exactly like 4 years ago on the dot. 1% away from them having to say that Orange Man won. And you could say, oh well, that's late. The East Coast, blah blah blah. Here's the problem: a lot of those places said that they were going to be running 24-hour shifts. There was all kinds of dumb shit that happened. There was the two mystery white vans full of mystery ballot. No, not white vans. I'm sorry. They were massive, massive box trucks. Enough they could have easily held millions of ballots. I mean, these huge, humongous box trucks. That bullshit happened. Um, there was like a bunch of USB sticks. They're like, where did the USB sticks go? We need those. Blah blah blah. Then there was another one where they said like some door was unlocked. I don't know if it was like the door to a ballot tabulating thing. Then there was all the boom boom threats. So like a lot of like dumb shit happened, but like I'll be honest. Besides those two box trucks, I would say the election was handled extremely professionally, way better than 4 years ago. I think when they run it that tight, it's still possible, but very unlikely that they can steal it because it's just being run so efficiently. There's no slack. There's no slack in it. So if that fucking white box truck bullshit hadn't happened, um, everything would have been fine. There is no excuse for that. They said, "Oh, we want to wait until we get them all, until we give the update." You know what that sounds like? That sounds like fucking cheating to me. And then there was some other county where they were like, "Oh, 15,000 college kids don't know how to sign their name, so we can't validate these." I'm like, that's ultra specific. That sounds like a load of BS. So then, you never heard anything about that again. Um, and so, yeah, then there was one where they're like, no, this machine stopped tabulating all the write-in stuff, so there's like 15,000 ballots that we can't scan now. There was a lot of dumb shit like that. But I think the thing is, like, you had so many lawyers and so many judges and so many police and so many observers watching it that like they couldn't pull anything. They tried voter intimidation at the ballot boxes. They tried turning people away at the ballot boxes. They tried shutting the ballot boxes off. sorry, the voting booth things. They tried shutting those off early, but like every single time they tried, people were on Twitter in seconds sharing it all. And it just kept getting to the right people over and over and over again. Like every single time somebody tried some bullshit, it got squashed. Like it was amazing. And I think it really shows that like you could actually easily if there was no oversight, this thing would be easy to like throw into just total and utter disarray. There were some really interesting things I thought. I think having the electronic tabulating in one spot, I think is a good idea. So they have to like bring the USB stick out and go stick it in the other machine and have it read. Having all that in one spot, I think, is a good idea because I think it's easier to secure. I think it's easier to monitor. Do you have a single point of failure? Yeah, but you can have like a heavy security presence there. You can have heavy camera presence there. Um, just way easier to secure instead of having that decentralized and worry about people screwing with it or mistakes, accidents happening. So I think there was like actually a lot of really good lessons learned having enough staff to just be ready to hammer into it 24 hours a day. But there's still some bullshit like, oh, mail-in ballots are going to be coming in for like a week. What? No. Um, and the thing is you might say, oh well, what if they find a bunch of ballots? No, and they legitimately find a bunch of ballots, and I would actually like agree with you. Like that is a problem. That happened in Portland, twice, um, and it was total bullshit. It was during the primary, I think. They just found bags and bags of ballots in the post office that just hadn't gone in for some reason, and it happened like twice. But everyone scrambled. No, these are the safest elections. There's no election fraud going on right now. I'm like, well, clearly something's going on. So I mean, what do you do with that? Like, I don't know. I think if you have enough oversight, um, and if you have enough of a streamlined approach, like if a ballot box gets attacked, they can track down the people right away and get their votes back in. If a bunch of ballots get stolen and thrown in the garbage, you can react fast enough to not have all that get like slid under the rug. You can have enough visibility on it, enough transparency, like the light and the darkness. And so I think if there hadn't have been any transparency last night, I think it would have been a repeat from 4 years ago. But I think there was just so many people hell bent on just like maximum transparency and like responding accurately, like immediately on both sides. I think this is probably the fairest, at least nationally, on a national level, probably the fairest, safest election in a long time, securest. Um, but I can only say that because like they were so transparent. It isn't because my guy won or whatever. I'm not a big fan of Orange Man. Um, you know, I just wanted to see a fair election, and I think we got that. I don't know how anyone could look at 2008, 2012, 2020, and 2000, 2020, 16, 20, 24, and not think that it's weird that there was like 25 million extra votes last year. There's just there's no way. And I think this just I think yesterday's election highlights a couple things. Number one, just how much bullshit the 2020 elections were, um, and how that should have been seriously looked at instead of everybody mocked. First of all, and I think second of all, I think a lot of lefty loos that didn't think 2020 was stolen, I think it gave them this false sense of hope that 25 million votes were going to show up. They in their pea brains, they believe those 25 million votes were real, and so they sat up last night waiting for K-Bone to come on stage, thinking that those extra 25 million votes were real, that those 25 million people were real, even though those ballots aren't attached to real people 4 years ago. The original ballots don't even exist. Nobody knows where they are. People swear up and down those are 25 million real votes. And so last night, all the lefty-loos sat there waiting for their magic 25 million votes to show up because they think it's real, and the 25 million votes don't show up, and they collectively lose their minds. Instead, and I know this would never happen, but if somebody would just say, like, yeah, the 2020 vote was actually like bullshit, the 25 million votes weren't real, but instead they spent 4 years and change gaslighting everyone, in January 6th insurrection hoax, the election fraud's a hoax, like everything's a hoax, and Orange Man built everything on a hoax. If they had just said, oh yeah, we lied and we stole it, and those 25 million votes weren't real, but we're going to spend 4 years with Sleepy Joe anyway, it wouldn't have led the left up to this giant crash. But here's the thing, K-Bone came out and said, we're going to, peacefully transfer power, which was really like a lot of virtue signaling. I don't think they actually plan on not putting up a fight. But I think her saying that at the very least might at least a tiny bit minimize the civil unrest. Here's the thing, though. Now we segue to the main topic. The cities have been boarded up for days, and even as of today, the city is still boarding up. The civil unrest in Seattle and Portland last night was very minimal. The ninjas were out. There just wasn't a lot of them. Now, there could be two reasons for that. You might say, "Oh, Chance, you don't know what you're talking about. You're wrong." I don't think I'm wrong. Here's why. I think I've said many times that they come out early to probe for weaknesses. And I told everybody 4 years ago they were out marching around, but then they went home when there was no victor. And I didn't think the victor, and I thought they were going to do the same thing again this year, and they did. They waited all night to say who the victor was. If that bullshit in Pennsylvania hadn't happened, in Atlanta and a couple of other spots, he would have been the victor as of 7 or 8 p.m. West, and I think the ninjas would have kicked off. But they waited, just like Orange Man waited. Very similar programming, I think, which makes sense that they would all be on the same page and operate off the same trigger points. So they probed last night. Last night they probed. Tonight could be the real night. However, keep in mind there's a difference between this year and 4 years ago. Let's see. 2020, November 2020. That was there was a weekend right away. Here the weekend is, we still have a couple more days till the weekend. So they could still be coming into town as the initial scouting groups probe. And they know the cop. So the ninjas know that the cops can't stay on OT for very long. Right now, the cops are doing 12-hour shifts. They're getting burnt out. There's no time off allowed. And the cops are in good spirits right now, and they're smiling, and they're doing their liaison officer stuff, and they're trying to catch them before they start. Meanwhile, since the rest of the cops don't have anything to do, and they're already mobilized, they can do stuff like take out the street crime that's going on, which is really unfortunate for anybody who thought that they were going to get away with anything during the political civil unrest, because all those cops are mobilized with nothing to do, which is usually the opposite of what's going on. So a street takeover will get their asses handed to them because all the cops are already mobilized, which means there's virtually no turnaround time for them to take on, even a moderate level of street crime. So really the city in this heightened level of preparedness, even though there's not a ton of them, there's, federal Homeland, state, and police. There's probably sheriffs there too. They've caught just tons and tons and tons and tons of cops with the National Guard on standby. Like, unless you had, an overwhelming amount of ninjas going after the city right now would be a really bad idea. Um, that being said, a couple problems. The jails are full. That's a huge problem. And there aren't that many cops. There's enough to handle like a small to like small or moderate. But like if there was even like an average sized group, they would all have to retreat and just go back to like fighting him out in the streets until the National Guard could mobilize. Um, so you might be asking, like, do I actually think it's going to get that far? And the reality is I don't know. I don't think the Ninja Brigade, they don't seem to have the numbers that they had 4 years ago. So I don't. I think part of that is because 4 years ago they had the Rona funding, they had no jobs, and they had so much free money that they could shake us. They could do whatever they wanted. Now they could steal all that stuff, but I guess part of the problem when I thought they could just steal everything to fund their operation, like almost everything's shut down now. So there isn't tons of things in the city that they can steal from to like fund their operation. I mean, it's kind of like going into a big gladiatorial arena. I mean, in a lot of ways, that's even what the city looks like now. They have the plywood painted black. It looks like something out of a video game. It is surreal. It is like you are in a giant city-sized video game where the video game company couldn't have been bothered to render a bunch of windows and doors because it's all just this matte black plywood, spray painted black plywood. Um, it's surreal. It's like going into another universe, and so there's videos of it online, and that might be really intimidating for the ninjas to go deal with because they don't have they don't have a lot of that like sensory. What's the word I'm looking for? They're not getting like the sensory response that they want. They can't really necessarily go smash a window because the windows are these really thick matte black. What's that? I always forget like the three letters of that big heavy thick plywood. Was I saying cardboard? Plywood. Really thick plywood, and then nailed into like just these big 2x4 frames that weigh like hundreds of pounds. So, is it ABS? IBS? Uh, ABS? Plywood? I always, yeah. Those huge ABS panels are. I don't know. I don't know. I think they plan on leaving that wood up for a long time because I think part of them spray paint it so they can't burn it down. But I bet you part of that spray paint or the paint that they put on it's to like seal it up so it's going to last a while. They're going to probably leave it boarded up through the weekend. But my suspicion is that they plan on leaving that wood up through the election. Like when there's tons of videos of them putting it up last week or earlier this week. I keep forgetting it's only Wednesday. They put this stuff up like it wasn't coming down. Like they framed it and then nailed in the whole thing. It's like it's solid. So that deprives the ninjas of like a lot of their energy. They either have to find places that aren't boarded up or they're going to have to go into the suburbs because the city is turned into like a giant gladiatorial arena. No joke. I don't think they're going to go down there because they've effectively been deprived of. They might find cars and tires and stuff, but oh yeah, but if the garbage companies have been emptying out all the garbage, if there's no cars in the streets, I mean they can go hassle the homeless people, which is kind of a dick move. They can go set up a Chaz, but the thing is like there's nothing down there anymore. So you set up a Chaz in the middle of the city and like so what? Nothing's there now. They kind of like shit the bed on that. It's it's actually weird, you know. It's really hard for me to like really quantify how there's nothing down there. There's no reason for them to take the city over anymore. Does that make sense? Um Part 1, like part 2 of that is like winter's coming. So if there's, you know, another deep freeze, there's really no point in them posting up down there. It's just going to be cold and nasty. They usually don't post up after, I want to say November 20th, because the weather just gets too brutal. So I don't know what they're going to do. I think their only recourse is going to be to go after suburban areas again and start going after small towns again, which they have no problem doing. So the small towns and the suburban rural areas, they're all going to have to be ready for the ninjas showing up again and plan and train and network and communicate accordingly. Um, that's in the short term with the ninjas. The long term, I think something else is coming. I think there's going to be civil unrest, but I think it's going to be in protests, but I don't think they're going to be the ninjas. I think it's going to be like the pro Hamas people, the pro Hamas crowd funded by Iran. But here's the weird thing: Iran's currency crashed today at just the thought of Orange Man coming back into power. If that's probably because everybody there sold all their money to try to buy some of their currency, and it probably crashed their currency, is my guess. So I think what's going to happen is, um, I think what's going to happen is, you know, Orange Man's going to come into power and shut down, hopefully, Iraq's funding too, if Iraq is funding Iran, which is going to trim down Hezbollah, Hamas, and all the other places over there. I can't even think of all their names right now. Um, Hezbollah. Did I say that already? All those places over there that Iran is funding, I think it's all going to stop. And they're probably going to have to divert to something else. And that could be when all the sleeper cells start crackle-lacking. And that's why you have to use my discount code for. No, I don't have any. I don't have anybody sponsoring my show. Um, but you're gonna, you know, you have to prepare for a grid down. They're gonna try to go after the grid. They're gonna try to shut down. They're probably gonna go back to trying to shut down all the army recruitment centers and all of the military contractors and all the three-letter buildings. And they're probably going to start going after the grid again and just try to. I'm not talking about the ninjas, the commies. I'm not talking about the commies. I'm talking about like the Iran backed like Hamas larpers that run around. Um, I think there's, you know, there's a little bit of ninjas in them, but I also think that there's like a different crowd too, and I think like the sleepers are going to start, if they haven't already, started infiltrating and using those crowds as cover for their intel gathering and eventually launch their attacks from those crowds. I think going anywhere near those pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas crowds are going to be extremely dangerous. I think they're going to look, you know, almost entirely innocent, and then there could be like the one in there that's primed to do something really bad. And I think that you're going to end up with two kinds of Hebrew people. I think you're going to end up with the kind that are pro-Israel. You're going to have pro-Israel Hebrew people, and you're going to have people that are pro-Palestine Hebrew people. And the pro-Palestine Hebrew people are going to, also known as like the apologists, they could be harboring bad guys too. The bad guys could be launching from either group, but they won't be launching from the pro-Israel group. The pro-Israel group's probably going to be clashing with them like crazy, and I wouldn't go anywhere near that can of worms either. Um, they they have shown many times in the past that they can handle the pro-Israel side can handle themselves just fine. Um, I would not get anywhere near it when those two start having it out. Boy, howdy. And so I think that's what's going to happen. And you might think there's no precedent for that. No, there absolutely is. Those two groups have been fighting it out. Not recently, not within the last couple months, but definitely right after 10/7. Crap, I'm forgetting the day. Oh, it's terrible. So October, crap. Yeah, October 7th. I'm not completely nuts with my terrible memory. Um, on the anniversary, I'm kind of surprised that nothing happened locally on the anniversary of it, but like there's gonna be that the pager thing happened. Like there might not be like a lot of Hamas leaders left, but like the next wave of attacks is gonna start at some point, and there will be more anti-Semitic stuff at colleges, and they're probably going to attack some poor innocent Israeli kids. And then it's going to be like, how do you protect them when there's like Hamas psychos running around? And it's just kind of like cascade again, and it's going to spill out onto the streets across America, and it's probably going to be like the college takeover, but worse. And I still I still wouldn't put it past the Israeli people to just be like, well, if our sons and daughters aren't safe in America, then either there's going to be roaming Israeli defense mobs running around, which completely would not put it past them to do that, or they're just going to start arming and training their kids, and we end up with some kind of like Hamas/Palestine Israeli civil war on. No, civil war is not the right word. War? Yeah, on like American soil. I could see that easily happening. Like we were almost there already once, a couple months ago. So, um, so I think like that'll be happening alongside like the whole Kami Ninja thing. Like it could, either one of those things could just spill out. Because here's the thing, the you got to understand, like conservatives breathe like a sigh of relief when their person wins, and then all their chemicals in their body dump and they pass out just from the pure exhaustion of it all. I know because I crashed earlier. Like you gotta understand that's not how the left works. They they have their very public meltdowns where they go scream at everything like little morons because they can't handle their emotions at all. And then they wake up the next day and they're like, okay, time to dig back in and plan the resistance. And Indivisible already came out with a thing saying they're going to be doing Indivisible 2.0, and it's going to be absolutely massive. They said they're not creating super groups; they're just creating new resistance cells in like every single city to just shut everything down politically for the next 4 years. Which means even if we get the House and Senate, we're probably only going to have them for 2 years because Indivisible's going to pick everything apart like they did 8 years ago. Um, they're extremely good at that. Indivisible, if you don't know, is like the left wing's version of like the Tea Party. They basically, was it Rachel Maddow? I can't remember who it was, but they basically stole the Tea Party playbook and then just flipped it backwards. They're going to be a force to be reckoned with, and then the commies are their military wing to go direct action against politicians, left, right, center, up, down, green, blue, purple, whether they're left or right leaning politicians, to go after all of them to bully them into whatever cause it is they land on, which is probably going to be Palestine Hamas, and it's probably all going to dovetail together. Or whatever the cause of the day is, it could be something completely different. Um, so They have infinite funding and they have nothing to do. All the conservatives are going to go back to work. All the left is going to pout and then try to figure out how they can spend the next 4 years fucking everything up. So you got to realize that, like, this is no time. Like, 8 years ago, the same thing happened. All the conservatives let their guard down and didn't do jack shit for 4 years, and then were shocked when they lost the House and Senate, and shocked when Orange Man didn't actually fucking do anything. And it took a year to get him going, and then there was only like a year of good times. By then, the 2 year thing was over. He got nothing through the fucking House or Senate, and then we had the Rona for 2 years. Like, do not think that these 4 years are going to be a fucking picnic. You're going to have the left making everyone's life a living hell politically and probably through direct action. And you're going to have all this Hamas bullshit going on. Right? So, unless Israel decides to calm down and Iran decides to calm down. But I can tell you, in thousands and thousands of years, shit that's never happened for 200, those two have been fighting forever. And they will be fighting forever. Orange Man cannot get them to stop fighting forever. He can only get them to stop fighting for a little while. But all that means is that they're just reloading and restocking and preparing for the next time to try to kill each other. That's all they do. It's all they fucking do, is try to kill each other. And the problem is the Hebrew people have completely permeated our entire society. And if K-Bone had won, I think her husband was maybe one of them, which was one of my speculations for maybe why that was, why she had been put in power. I don't know. That's a really deep conspiracy theory. But, like, there was quite a bit of chat about how the Hebrew folks wanted somebody all the way at the top. And you could argue that it was for national security, or you could argue that they just want to control everything. That's your prerogative. I don't really care. They can try to do whatever they want. Um, you know, I think it's dumb that they don't have to file as like a foreign influence. You know, you can't have, the Russians and Chinese running around doing influencing us, but you can have them running around influencing us without having to register as anything, or whatever it is. What's his name? Dang it! I don't want to go like research all these names of everything to get them perfect. But there's the senator guy that talks a lot about that, about how they don't have to register as anything. So that's interesting. I think I've learned a lot of how everything works. I've always kind of known, but I never learned like a lot of the details. Now I get a lot of it. So I think, in the next 4 years, you can expect more grid down, more civil unrest. And so I asked if there was anything anyone specifically wanted me to talk about, and so ice and cold, and it was it last year, or was it 2 years ago? I already forgot. But like, people, the bad guys like attacking the power grid when we are at our coldest, because that is when they can cause the biggest mass casualties. So the colder it gets, the more prepared you need to be able to survive the cold with no power. And that is not easy. There's some really great videos. I think Steve Wallace maybe did one like called Tent Within a Tent. That's how a lot of people survived in Portland. They put tents up in their houses and then stayed inside the tents in their houses, because you can have like the best insulation on the planet, unless you're underground or something, like, and completely insulate. Even then, you'll just freeze. You're gonna freeze no matter what. That's my point, especially when it's like around zero and you've got wind chill and insanity and branches trying to harpoon your house, power lines down everywhere. Like, you're gonna freeze no matter what. And I'm kind of like remiss. Like, nobody ever really wants to like hear this stuff. It's not like the cool stuff. A lot of people would rather argue than talk about like How do you get somebody warmed up? So you can't necessarily stay in the house forever. Like, what if your house is the most insulated house on the planet, but your wood pile's outside to get the wood into the stove? Like, that cold's going to come in. You've got to get the house heated back up. It's kind of a mess. And people do the propane in their house, and then they don't wake up again, or their chimney's blocked, and the carbon monoxide fills up their house. They don't wake up again, or they just freeze to death. Um, you can warm yourself up too much too fast and burn yourself. There's frostbite. There's a lot of different, there's slips and falls, there's icicles landing on your head. People's roofs cave in from the snow and ice being too heavy. So I've got like a special tool that I can get the snow and ice off my roof really, really safely. But if you don't have like really good snow boots, really good snow gloves, ways to dry it all back out again, if you're not heating your house isn't dry unless you're running like dehumidifiers that don't require batteries. You're not going to have any way of dehumidifying, getting all that moisture out from inside your house. When it doesn't warm up, your house starts to mold. You get mold in there, you die, especially when you're sealed in with the mold. So, like, if you have those like shitty canvas awnings, you could go out there and you could just get crushed with thousands of pounds of ice. You're just dead instantly. Nobody, like, you think your wife is going to be able to dig you back out, like, if she could even get to a shovel. You're gonna call friends. Well, you got no power. Like, you're gonna get on the radio. You're gonna call 911, and people are gonna come dig you out. Like, even if they got conked on the head, like, their core temperature is gonna be plummeting. They're gonna be like dead in a heartbeat. It's not like an avalanche. It's like getting crushed with frozen concrete. So you have got to be super, super smart. You got like icicles, canopies. Like, don't be a dummy and wait till your loved one is under the canopy and start poking up at it with a shovel. Like, you've got to go inside, get the shovel from inside, safely inside your house, and try to slowly, get the weight off of it somehow, depending on how it's sloped, and hope it doesn't just collapse, Or you've got to go out from another entrance, make sure that's safe, come all the way around, and hope your shovel is not under the awning that could crush you. Like, we haven't had a really, 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 really bad ice storm in a long time. People get inconvenienced with little ice storms all the time. So much so that they forget what really bad ice storms are like. So that means having, manual can openers. That means Survival Living talks about all this all the time. Having canned food that doesn't need to get warmed up, or if you have MREs that have, heaters in them, and you can like sometimes save the heaters, keep yourself warm with the heater or whatever. You can, warm up hot water bottles. If you have a sleeping bag for everybody, but you got to make sure the sleeping bags don't get wet. So having dehumidifiers, keeping everything shoveled without getting killed by icicles. If the roads get ruts that are too high from all the trucks, you're not driving out in that anymore. Or snowplows could come by and snowplow your house in. That happens every couple years here. The snowplows think they're being so helpful. It's like, dude, who are you helping? Like, nobody can leave their driveway now. Not flying out of your driveway trying to, when you finally have traction, and then going right into the road where other cars can't stop, causing wrecks. Like, you've got to follow your gut and follow your brain and not get in a hurry. Not even going anywhere near down to power lines. And that's the thing, like, you might be able to get out of your driveway, but there could be like 50 downed power lines between you and the grocery store. Or the city could just shut your road down. That happened to us before. The city shut our road down, and my work kept wanting me to come in. I've probably told this story before, a stupid Christmas party. And I said, my road is shut down by the city. And they go, so you're not coming to the Christmas party? My road is shut down by the city. So you're not coming to the Christmas party? I need to know if you're coming to the Christmas party. My road is shut down by the city. I don't think I should have to dignify somebody with a response. That still pisses me off to this day. Don't make me say I'm not coming. Understand that the city shut down my road. Now, use your two fucking brain cells to answer that question yourself. I'm not talking past you. I'm answering you, and you're just not. You're just choosing to not accept my response. Well, the manager wants to know if you're coming in. My road is closed down by the city. Now, extrapolate from that whatever you want. You tell the manager whatever you have to tell him. Here you go. Here's what you tell him. Chance Paladin can't come in. His road is shut down by the city from the ice storm. Okay? Like, there you go. There's your answer. So yes or no? That's still pisses. That's just like a shitty dick measuring contest. It's like, you want to have a pissing match over talking past each other? Man, that was just so long ago. It's 2006, 2007. Yeah, people were parking on the side of the road and waking up the next day to their car being like half a mile away. But I would argue even that one wasn't a really, really bad one. That was inconvenient. But we haven't had a really, really bad one since like 2001, which was also, interestingly enough, back when the last really bad flood happened. So, or no, the last really, it was like 1997 or something like that. Like, we're so ludicrously overdue for just like absolutely insane weather. And I'm really hesitant to say like how to prepare for like a hurricane. In my opinion, I'm 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 glad that I didn't talk a lot of shit during that hurricane that wiped out the Appalachians. Um, because if your house is in a flood zone, even if it's a 100-year flood zone, if your house is in a mudslide area, you're just not surviving it. And I'm not saying that to be a piece of shit. It's just true. We have that same problem in Washington. I don't really know about Oregon, although there's a couple places that are kind of on cliffs and the sides of hills. But I haven't really heard of those landsliding. But it's a huge problem in California, and it's a huge problem in places in Washington. You're just not, I hate to tell you, preppers, you're just not surviving. I hate to tell you, Appalachians that are either left leaning if you're in the town or conservative if you're out in the rural areas. If your house is in a shitty spot, no amount of being a prepper is going to save you. Or is going to save your house, is going to save your stuff. Those are actual acts of God where he's mashing the destruction button, and it's certain absolute destruction. You're just not surviving it. And that's how I feel about really bad hurricanes. Short of having a bunker that is drilled into solid rock, that is out of floodplains and out of landslides, you're just not surviving. It takes a bunch of angels, and none of your stuff is going to make it. So it's hard for me to. That's why I don't spend a lot of time talking about like prepping for hurricanes. You know, it's total utter destruction. It's why everybody is supposed to evacuate. Now, all the apologists could get in there. Well, actually, Asheville couldn't have evacuated. Blah 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 blah. 100-year water. Blah blah blah. I know. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about like the normal, flow rida hurricane thing, like the normal people that are in the normal route of the hurricane. It's why those people are just supposed to evacuate, because they forecast total, utter, absolute destruction. And some of those, operations centers are basically bunkers on hills drilled into solid rock. And then they kind of just utilize, if anything miraculously survives, that's what they utilize. to stage stuff and get everybody going again. I think I I get tired and I get annoyed and I get frustrated with people who are in 100-year flood zones. They're in the floodplains. Oh, it's never flooded here before. It probably has. Probably just been 100 years. Um, oh well, you can't plan for those things. Uh, I I I beg to differ. I think you should plan on Murphy's Law. If there is a possibility that something can wipe you out, figure out what that thing is and plan accordingly. Or just plan on losing everything. And for a lot of people, that could be fires. For a lot of people that may think they were completely bulletproof, but they're right next to train tracks and all of a sudden something spills. Whoopsie. Um, you realize that whatever the one, and then if it's none of that, it's going to be like a comet, or a Sharknado. You have to plan for whatever it is. If you're near the coast, it's going to be tsunamis, it's going to be hurricanes. Like, the plan, your survival plan might be evacuation. Now, here's the problem with evacuation. Some of these states, Florida, apparently never got the memo that you need to open both sides of the freeway so people can evacuate. South Carolina, they'll open both parts of the freeway. Even in like the Orville in California, I think. I can't remember if they opened both sides of the freeway or not, but I remember if you go look at most evacuations, most mass evacuations, they forget to open both sides of the freeway because I don't know if they're DEI hires or just fucking morons. So you gotta understand that like evacuation is fraught with risk, and if you're trying to evacuate forest fires, it has happened so many times now. Has it happened in Australia? Happened in Hawaii, I think, where like the fires just overtake the people that are trying to evacuate because fires can go so fast, and their fire nados are a real thing. And fire nados in Australia are particularly nasty. Fires can also jump up mountains. They can like completely jump the middle. Fires can completely jump down mountains. You have to have the fuel to be able to get away, but you also need, a pretty robust, 4-wheel drive with good tires, a winch. I saw just these overlander fucking idiots, and they were like the 10 things that you don't need for your mall crawling overlanding vehicle, and they were like, just get rid of your winch. And one of them was like, I got rid of my winch because it didn't work the one time that I needed it. The other guy's like, I got rid of mine too. I'm like, oh, you're both probably gonna die. Like, you need a chain and come along, and you need like a really good winch or something. You might have to like pull a tree out of the way. Your chainsaw. If you keep a chainsaw with you, it might run out of gas, or there could be power lines down, and you might not be able to get anywhere near it. You might have to go around it. But like, I think it was Southern Prepper One was talking about just like the sheer, well, in PNW Guerrilla, there was a bunch of people that were talking about how like around Asheville, like the roads are just gone, and people are in like such zombie normalcy bias mode that despite the road being gone, their brain superimposes the road being there. Like if you've gone through an intersection where the light's been green a million times and your brain superimposes the light being green when it's red, or your brain superimposes there not being any traffic there when you're trying to take your left despite a car barreling at you. Southern Prepper One said there was cars just flying off the road and into sinkholes because they're not used to that being there, and they're used to being in autopilot, and I don't know if they're just so cranky or pissed off or tired or just ornery that they refuse to accept the fact that the road in front of them is gone. This is a real thing. And while he was there, cars were just plummeting off the road because their brains just didn't accept that the road was gone. And this happened to, this actually my friend in South Carolina had a sinkhole open up in his road the size of like a vehicle, and like he couldn't get the city to come out there and even put traffic cones around it, and it was big enough to swallow a car. And like if it's raining, you can't see anyway because the whole all the asphalt and like the reflection of the rain on your headlights is all like the same color, so your lights just drift off into nothing, and your brain doesn't go, oh, that must be a hole. I think he like stood out there and made sure nobody drove in it, but like the city wouldn't come out and put out traffic cones or anything. um, People will just drive into those, which is infuriating. Really, like Darwin Award level stuff. I don't know. I don't want to say that most of the planet just deserves to get go to a better place, but like I think when stress, anxiety, drama, sleep deprivation, and normalcy bias, and people just being cranky and refusing to accept reality coalesce quite often into people just driving off the road, sliding off the road, slamming into each other. And it's really hard to program your brain to like not they I've heard it called autopilot. Um However, I could say in the past, I've almost made conscious decisions to like drive in ways that I know are unsafe because I thought maybe that was the only way I was going to make it through, only for my brain to be like, if I make this choice, there's no like abort process. If I'm wrong, I'm going to get creamed, and there's nothing I'll be able to do about it, and I will be potentially sacrificing other people's lives if I make these traffic choices, traffic driving choices. And I've probably saved my own life and saved other people's lives probably about 10 times having that thought go through my head. Stopping before pulling out and actually making sure everybody else is going to stop. And I truly believe that's why people get into so many wrecks, and that's why every third car on the road right now seems to be destroyed. Side note, um, we we're trying to lower our car insurance somehow, and where is it here? Lowering our liability in limits, like our insurance people like lost their mind when we tried to like lower our liability limits and our uninsured underinsured limits. That's crazy to me because there are so many people driving uninsured now. Two parts. There's so many people underinsured or not insured now, and then it's driving everybody else's insurance through the roof. That's part one. And there seems to be no consequences for that at all. Part two, if your liability limits are really high, people are just going to sue you for whatever your liability limit is. So, like, and part three, your insurance doesn't pay you enough to get you a new car anyway. Like, I think everyone should have some level of car insurance. I think it should be like one of those like mutually, like a what's the word? Just like an agreement that if you're going to be a part of society, especially people who can't drive worth shit, that they get some kind of insurance. Because I think a vehicle is essentially just a gigantic weapon, far more dangerous than firearms. As far as extremely more dangerous than firearms. And that's not even getting into the whole, suburban assault vehicles and giant 4x4s and all those things that people swear up and down are giant death machines. I'm just talking about normal vehicles like grandma driving down the wrong side of the freeway again. Not to mention just all the like crazy road rage. Anyway, my point is like, I think society, especially now that nobody has any money and a lot of people don't have jobs, like some level of vehicle insurance I think makes sense. Part of that though is because medical is so high then someone's insurance is going to need to cover medical, because people's health insurance either doesn't exist, or their health insurance isn't going to want to cover your injuries if somebody else caused them. So, like, what would I do? What would I do? What would you do? First of all, I don't think you should be able to sue people at all for getting in a wreck. Oh, my back and my neck. Okay, well, your insurance pays their medical bills. But this whole like pain and suffering bullshit, and like, I guess if someone loses their loved one, $1 million or 2 million doesn't bring their loved one back. A lot of them just see losing their loved one as another payday. This is disgusting. $1 million isn't going to bring the kid back, And yeah, it's 25 grand to put him in the ground now. But like, all those are just like society problems that like money doesn't actually fix. So you lose your son or you lose your daughter, and you what? Have enough money to buy a TV now or something? Like, how does that work? What? How? Nah, I'm not. It's a slippery slope especially with a lot of these movements. Somebody died XYZ way, and $1 billion comes in, the family's set for life, and they turn into like rich philanthropists. And it's like, I feel like if somebody passes away, you try to raise awareness and associate their memory with some positivity. You don't, it's just so gross. Like, society and our culture in general is like so gross. If something really bad happened to a loved one of mine, I'm not going to pretend like suing them back into oblivion is going to help or fix anything. If they're a giant company, it's not even going to make a dent, and they're going to be able to outlawyer me, or they're just going to try to settle and not have to take responsibility. If it's an individual person, they're not going to have enough money to do anything about it anyway. If it was a DUI, whatever, like, do they even have any assets or resources? And people can get a job, and you can't garnish them, you can't garnish their wages, because they're going to have ways around it. The whole, like, society is just broken. And insurance, vehicle insurance, none of this is financial or any advice about anything. Insurance doesn't fix any of that. On the best day, the best thing insurance can do for you is hopefully help you with your medical bills, and hopefully help you get a rental, and hopefully help you get a new car. Here's the problem: rentals, crazy expensive. New car, crazy expensive. Your old car, objectively worthless. And your insurance premiums are probably going to go up if they don't just drop you entirely. And the lawyers are going to just try to settle out of court. Or, goodness forbid, if the person that hits you is your own and has the same insurance as you do. I don't even know how that shit works. And they're going to try to get out of paying as much as possible, or they're just going to blame you entirely, even if you have cameras. And they're not going to do jack shit for an investigation. Like, the average person that watched a few crime shows is going to do a better investigation than a lot of these people. It's disgusting. And what if an illegal hits your car? Then what the fuck do you do? That shit blows my mind. Like, and that's a real thing that really happens. Illegals can drive cars uninsured. They could be trying to hit people on fucking purpose, trying to get a payday out. Shit is just unreal. Like, society is broken. Medical is too high. Vehicle is too high. They still want you to have your fucking tabs and license plates and shit. There's hit and runs in the city every day with 1 billion cameras. They still never find who did it. All the trafficking. I mean, the people that threw the boom boom in the election box, they've got pictures of that car from every fucking angle, and they still have no idea who did that. Like, and home insurance is the same way. Like, you need it all, I think, as a good society contract. But, like, let's not pretend that it's not like a bandage over an insanely broken system. It does not fix people driving like fucking maniacs. Like, these people they go in the middle lane and they're going 10 or 15 under the speed limit, and you try to go around them. and they go 15 or 20 over the speed limit. And then so you try to slow down, and then they slow down. You try to speed up, and they speed up. That shit is like that everywhere. And that's not people running across the street, bicyclists running across the street, scooters going across the street, people flying through intersections, people pushing people in wheelchairs through intersections. Like, it is all a fucking demolition derby. And it's just like, I want to have as absolutely minimum car insurance as possible just to be able to drive. Because if I hit someone or if someone hits me, I'm fucked no matter what. I think I've told y'all about this. I won't tell you the whole story again. I had one of the closest calls I've ever had in my life. I could practically see the pores of the faces of the people flying by me over twice the speed limit through a school zone, an inch off my bumper. And I don't think it even registered that I was there to them. I would have been fucking dead. Or they would have hit the passenger side. I was driving, but they were going twice over the speed limit. I don't know how they would have got a hold of my wife to let her know. God knows I would have been in the hospital for I don't fucking know how long. She would have had to call the hospitals to probably fucking find me. It's horrible. It gives me massive, massive, massive amounts of anxiety. It could have been a stolen car. It could have been stupid kids. No fucking insurance. It could have been DUI. They could have been high as kites. They probably were. They didn't even move. Like, their heads didn't even move. They had like tunnel vision locked forward. Their heads didn't move when they were an inch off my fucking bumper as I was trying to get out of their way. It was like they were in a trance. And if they could have ran away or driven away, they probably would have. And then what? I'm just another fucking like no name in a hospital. My wife wondering where I am until I can come out of my coma and fucking call her, I guess. Like, do you see how that fucking bullshit? It's infuriating the fucking society that we live in right now. And my point to that is, so what if there's a little bit extra in my fucking car insurance? So fucking what? They still would have found any reason to be like, oh, well, did you see that car coming? Did you have a green light? Nobody's saying that you had a green light. It's just like, you guys have got to be fucking kidding me. I could have been dead. I could have been fucking paralyzed. I could have been a fucking vegetable. And like, maybe somebody from work would have seen me and then they could have contacted HR and HR could have like dug through my records and found my wife's name because, you know, by the time the cops get there, someone could have came and stolen my phone and wallet. Like, we are living in a third world fucking country. Like, you don't get it. These insurance companies don't fucking get it. And they sit there with their cute faces and their cute signature lines spouting your this and that number is under this and that number. No, we're fucked. And the companies keep trying to make us come in the office over and over and over, and we are fucked. Our whole society is fucked. No amount of health insurance and vehicle insurance and homeowners insurance is going to save you. You should have it all. But don't, you know, as an agreement with society that you're a functioning member of society. What I'm saying is, that is not a safety net. You know, you can have like all different kinds of like limited, you know, liability. I forgot what it's called. Those personal liability insurances. You know, like if you're in the hospital for a certain amount of time and they pay you out, things like that. It's always seemed to me, supplemental insurance. Like, if you're really worried and, you know, you've already got pretty good insurance, you know, your work might have like really good supplemental insurance that you've just never talked to them about if you're worried about that stuff. But here's the problem. Let's not pretend that 60+% of Americans have, even enough money to buy groceries right now, let alone worry about that. So I am not judging anyone who's driving around without insurance or not buying the tabs for their car. Maybe someone stole their license plate. They can't afford a new license plate and new tabs because it's between buying a new license plate and feeding their kid for one more night. Like, we're fucked. We are fucked. And you might think that we elected Orange Man, but you've got to hang in there for like a year before he can turn things around again. That's how long it took him last time. Here's the problem, though. We've got to make it through the election first. No, not the election. Inauguration? We have to make it through inauguration. This is going to be a long ass 2 months. And you don't fucking remember that the difference between when he was elected, there had already been months of civil unrest before he was even elected. And then it was 2 months of absolute hell that made 2020 look like a joke. That's what inspired my book. My books. I was watching the civil unrest for months and months and months, and nothing was being done about it. And he became president, and things got worse. That's what you don't get. That's what you don't remember. They were already protesting his speeches, his rallies. They were protesting his rallies. And then the night he was elected, they destroyed the city for like 3 days. They destroyed, what was that? What did I say, 2018? I'm sorry. I keep getting that screwed up. That was 2015. Wait, no. Dude, there's been so much like civil unrest, I'm getting it all fucking scrambled. 2016 through 2020. So it was 2015. 2015, October, November. If you go look it up, there's the videos in Portland. Some of the biggest civil unrest in the US that's ever happened. It lasted for 3 nights. $100 bajillion in fucking damage. They had to call in cops from like 100 miles to try to quell the unrest. Arguably, the ninjas had a lot more numbers back then. They promised like 100 days of hell up to his election, or up to his whatever they call it, the January 20th or whatever it is, the day that, and then they all went down to DC, and it was just complete and total fucking anarchy, and the motorcycle people came down to try to help, but they were getting like ripped right off their motorcycles by the ninjas. That was only the beginning. So my point is, this is only the day after. Back in 2016, this was only the beginning, and we had like 100 days of it. Everyone remembers 2020, nobody remembers 2015 and 2016. That's what inspired my books. You've got a plan for like 100 days of civil unrest, and then that's still only the beginning of 4 years. Because after the 100 days, they said there's going to be a whole year of civil unrest now. That was when they were like, we're trying to get him to release his tax returns, which is actually pretty laughable now. Someone leaked them, and it ended up being like a nothing sandwich, which is what he said. But like, people don't get how fucked we are. You've got to make sure your house is as safe as possible, and you've got to have a good bug out plan, and you could still just get finger snapped off this planet. And how do you, if you get in a wreck and you're in a coma, how does the hospital notify your wife and loved ones? Or if something happens to your wife and she gets in a wreck, how do they find you? The newer phones kind of have like emergency contact lists and stuff. It's horrifying. I know it's incredibly upsetting to think about, but a lot of people talk about like, oh, this is the plan, if the fucking balloon goes up, you rally your family to your house as soon as possible, but like, if they get knocked unconscious, like, how are you supposed to find them, and how are they supposed to find you? So like, if the grid is still up and the cell phones are still up, Does everybody activate like their phone tracking? Like that might be something to do. It does like crazy drain your battery. And so if you've got an older phone, that could like drain your battery like crazy fast. But I guess my wife could have called the cell phone company and like tried to have them ping my phone. But again, if someone had stolen my phone, like that'd be fucking useless. You know, do you have everybody put an AirPod? No, an air tag. Do you have everyone put like an air tag in their backpack and be like, okay, if the shit hits the fan, turn your air tag on? Like, these are the conversations that I want to have. But like, this shit's really uncomfortable for a lot of people to talk about because it's too fucking real. I have had horrific close calls that have traumatized me. But if I was going to get some kind of exemption at work, I would have to tell them what I've gone through. I would have to relive those moments. Talking to people who could not fucking care less about me and are looking for every reason to deny me being able to stay home where I'm safe. Um, in religious exemptions, it was the same damn thing. You have to share your religion with people who hate you and could not fucking care less, and who have scripts actively trying to counter your religion. And I'm not saying all this to just be like black pill. You still need some basic insurance. You still need a basic plan, but you need to figure out like the practicality of your plan. But that means facing your greatest fears, facing failure, facing defeat, and then figuring out how to mitigate it without getting in some kind of like a doom loop in your brain to where you get like paralyzed. Like there's always going to be some elements of risk, but like I'm petrified every time my wife goes out. And I'm sure it's not any easier when I have to go out, because when you've only got like one person or two people left on the planet that you can really count on, your whole life revolves around them. Their whole life revolves around you. Your lives are inexplicably intertwined. Every time you have to split up and they're not in the next room, it's fucking excruciating. And you would give anything to know where they are and know if they're okay. That's why, for the life of me, I don't understand parents that don't want their kids to have some kind of cell phone. I know it's extremely problematic, kids having cameras on their phone. I get that. I know social media when you're a kid is ludicrously problematic. Believe me, I know. However, being able to hear your kid's voice, knowing where your kid is, and being able how to coordinate your kid with your kid to go rescue them, there needs to be some kind of balance. Can you shut social media and the cameras off on all the kids' phones? Then I don't see a problem with them having their phones in the classroom. If something happens at the school, the kid can get a hold of the parent right away. The parent can, you don't have to deal with like dead drops where like your kid will be waiting at this location. Well, how do you know other people aren't going to come grab them? How will you even know that something's wrong? Schools are notorious for not even telling the parents that something happened. So the parent would have no way of knowing that their kid is waiting at a pickup location if like comms have dropped. Oh, it's just like, you've got to figure all this out. Orange Man did not stop any of this. Interest rates may still go up. People may still get more broke. Vehicles aren't going to magically become more plentiful. Insurance isn't going to go down right away. Food and bills and stuff, like, you've got to plan on surviving the next 2 months, keeping food on the table, keeping bills paid, keeping the lights on, keeping your loved ones warm, making sure when shit pops off, no matter what it is, that you have a way of knowing exactly where they are, getting them home as fast as safe as possible, having alternate routes. There could be a wrecked train, there could be a wrecked semi. When I was on the road the other day, there was two at least 2, if not 3 or 4 wrecks. I lost count. And I couldn't tell when one wreck started and then the next wreck fucking ended. Like, that's a lot of people that were fucked the other day. Again, you've got to plan. Work with your loved ones. They're tough conversations. I don't know all the new technology. I know phones have tracking again. I know AirPods are really easy. Leave something down in the comments if you've already figured all this shit out. Radios, emergency radios. And none of that is even getting into like these pitch black rain tornadoes that have been happening in Oklahoma. If you're in a storm area, you need to have your emergency weather radio on like 24 fucking 7. In Oklahoma, there's these like pitch black rain tornadoes that you can't see or hear that are fucking huge, and they can go for hours. There was already a second one the other night. And if you're not watching at 2 a.m. to go call them, they're going to just get yeeted off the mortal coil. So you got to have Southern Prepper 1 is running a sale right now on his storm radio, $10 off. Get that one or go find one of your own. I'll try to remember to leave a link to his sale going on. I don't make any money off it, but like, I think that one functions as a storm radio too, but you could always have NOAA and stuff. I don't know if that one has the storm alerts. But you can go look and check it out. But like, these next 2 months, 3 months are going to be absolutely critical. And then the next year is going to be critical for turning the economy around so we can try to have enough money to prep again. Anyway, don't forget your mental health. And so, I guess one last little final plug for myself. I had the AI make me some music again, and I had the AI make me some animations again. I'm going to be loading that. I don't know when I'm going to hit live. It's going to render first. So since that's probably going to take forever to render, this is probably going to render way before that. So maybe that music will be really soothing to you and it'll help you relax. Talking about this really gets me worked up, but it's because I'm so frustrated and upset that we can't just stay home where we're safe. And I feel like we're all being fed to the wolves, and kids are being fed to the wolves, and civil unrest and the mayhem, vision preparedness, the mayhem is coming. And I just want everyone to be safe. The worst thing in the world is being separated from your loved ones during some kind of mayhem. And I want everyone to be okay. And it just pisses me off hearing the car insurance people going, oh, you're not going to have this kind of insurance anymore. You're only going to be able to be sued for this amount instead of that amount. It's like, fuck off. Don't pretend like you fucking care. You get, an extra $1 a commission if you go from this to this. Stop pretending like insurance is fucking helping anybody anymore. It's just a giant fucking Ponzi scheme. If everyone cared about everyone, we would get to fucking stay home until Orange Man can have Detroit build everybody a bunch of Toyota Hilux. That way we can all be driving in big pickup trucks where we're actually safe. I'll feel safe when I'm in a pickup truck, okay? And not a fucking car. Then everyone will be safe because we'll be wrapped in a bunch of fucking Detroit metal. Okay, then I won't be so fucking stressed out about driving. And my wife can drive a pickup truck. We can all be driving pickup trucks. Because you know why? Because this is America. We're taking our country back with our Toyota Hilux. No more fucking $80,000 pickup truck bullshit. Weak ass fucking 4-cylinder, 6-cylinder, whatever, these fucking pansy ass underpowered vehicles. Anyway, y'all take care. Tell all your loved ones that you love them. Hang in there and try to figure out plans to know where everybody is in case people get separated when the shit is the fan. Okay? And I will talk to y'all later. And if you listen this far, thank you. If your name is CDK, you're awesome. If your name is Birio McJuicerson, you're awesome. Anybody else? Let's just get through this, okay? The next, it's gonna be crazy, but we'll get through this together, okay? Okay. Bye.